Each year, HR.com provides over 220,000 members with more than 1,500 new webcasts and HRCI e-learning credits. Tune in and get certified today. Earn recertification and certification credits towards your PHR, SPHR, GPHR, HRMP, HRBP, WorldatWork, and IHR. Here's a sample of what you can find on HR.com.
We are facing a tidal wave. There's really no other way to describe what we are experiencing today. In the United States, which is where I'm coming from, a third of us are obese, another third of us are overweight, and then the remaining third are normal or underweight. We have an epidemic of lifestyle diseases such as heart disease, diabetes, chronic pulmonary conditions. Almost half of Americans have at least one chronic disease or condition, such as diabetes. About 1 out of 10 Americans have diabetes now. And what this has created is this has created a decrease in our overall quality of life. Not to mention the fact that it is costing us a lot of money. We're going to be talking about this some more, but about 75% of our healthcare costs today are due to these chronic diseases and conditions. And perhaps what is most disturbing about this equation, beyond what's happening to us, beyond what's happening to our economy and how it'll potentially implode if we don't figure this out, is the impact that it's having on our children. So for children in the United States, the obesity rate has tripled since the 1980s. So now almost 20% of our children are obese. It's estimated that for children who are born after the year 2000, that at least 25% of them will acquire type 2 diabetes, and for some populations it may even be as high as 30 or even 50%. And for the first time ever, we are facing the prospect that our children may experience a shorter life expectancy than we do. So I know that a lot of you are coming from places beyond the United States, so I want to emphasize the fact that this is not something that's happening just in the United States, but this is something that is happening around the world. So I'm going to take you around the world really quickly. So right now in Mexico actually has more people who are overweight than the United States. So the United States, about 68% of the population is either overweight or obese, and in Mexico it's actually 69%. In South Africa now you're more likely to die of heart disease than you are of TB or AIDS. In India, half of the population is malnourished and the other half is overnourished. And in fact, did you know that there's a recent report that came out of the UN showing that now world obesity trumps world hunger in terms of the number of deaths and disability. And then China now has a higher number, has the highest number of cases of diabetes in the world. And in places like the Middle East, the rate of diabetes is up to 25%. I was recently there, and I could not believe how high it was. So this is really a phenomenon that's happening around the world. So we might ask ourselves, each of us ask, well, what can I, as one single person, do? What can I possibly do to stand up to this huge tidal wave that's happening around the world? It feels so big. It feels so overwhelming. Well, if each of us were to do 3 simple things, stop smoking, eat healthy, and get active, then collectively we could prevent up to between 70 and 90% of the major chronic diseases that we are facing today. We know this. This is all common sense. But only 3% of the population in the United States actually does it. So the American Heart Association wanted to look into this into greater depth, and they identified what they call the Simple 7. These are the Simple 7 criteria for having a healthy heart. So the top 3, as you can see, are those basic 3, getting enough exercise, having a healthy diet, being a non-smoker for at least a year. And then 4 through 7 are so-called health risks, and these include things like weight, cholesterol, blood pressure, blood sugar level. So they wanted to find out how many people out of a group of 17,820 adults between the ages of 45 and 98 how many of those adults met the so-called Simple 7? And again, that number is 17,820 adults. Guess how many people met that Simple 7? 2 people. So what we have is we have this massive, massive disconnect between what we know we should be doing and what we are actually doing. And we also know, as I've said before, that it's like a waterfall. So at the bottom of the waterfall, these are those chronic diseases like heart disease and diabetes. But these are all, for the most part, preceded by so-called health risks, such as the ones we just talked about. So these are things like elevated blood pressure or being overweight or obese. And those health risks, by and large, are preceded by behaviors. So in other words, our health, by and large, equals our choices. And the million-dollar question is, how do we get people to make better choices? And that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today. So I want to give you a little bit of information about Motion Infusion. Motion Infusion is a company, a worksite wellness company that is helping companies to, quote, get in motion, literally as in getting people up and out of their seats, and figuratively as in getting people to make a change. So what we do is we do presentations like this to inspire people into action. We offer workshops that are more focused on this behavior change piece, and I'll be talking a lot about how you can effectively engage people in a sustainable behavior change process. We also work on culture change, and again, this is something we'll be talking about, but what we're finding more and more is that really the culture has a powerful influence on the choices that people make. And then finally, we also offer Train the Trainer. This is an example of some of the companies and organizations that we've worked with. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to take a quick moment now, and I'm going to turn it over to Natasha for this, and we're actually going to find out a little bit, hold on, I'm going to come back to this, about you, and then we'll come back to me. So what I would like for you all to do is I would like for you to respond to the question that Natasha is going to launch right now. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to find out a little bit about where you are with Worksite Wellness. So go ahead and launch the question if you would, Natasha. So this is a question about where you are in your Worksite Wellness program, and this is a program that today that is really relevant for any level, whether you're just getting started or you have one that's already up and running. And I see that we have most of you have one up and running so far. It looks like almost 50% of you have one that's up and running. And then it looks like, and Natasha, I am able to see this, it looks like that about 12% of you don't have one at all, 14% are thinking about it, 31% of you are just starting one, and then about half of you already have one up and running. Okay, so just to go back, as I promised, I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. I have a background in movement. I've also lived in Africa for almost 3 years, and this is something that I actually pull from quite a bit when I do these presentations. I have a background, of course, in wellness. I also have a background in public education, and this is something that I pull from quite a bit, especially in talking about motivation. And then finally, I have experience in the field of workplace learning and performance, just a fancy name for training and development. Okay, so let's, oh, I seem to be frozen here. Hold on. Okay, sorry about that, everybody. We're going to get, here we go. Okay, so our agenda today is first we're going to talk about what is Worksite Wellness and why do it. So we're going to get the why here. Part 2 is how to get started, and then part 3 is how to make it last. So what is it and why is it worth it? So Worksite Wellness, very simply, is just a way of promoting health in the workplace to prevent disease and or manage disease, to reduce healthcare costs, and to help enhance the bottom line. And so what we're going to be talking about today is, besides being the right thing to do, because how can you argue with the fact that it's the right thing to do, that companies help their employees to be healthier and their families to be healthier? But it turns out that it's also the right thing to do in terms of helping the bottom line. And we'll be talking about that. And this is, of course, a really important piece for getting those senior leaders on board. So the reality is that we can no longer afford to not do anything. Just think back to that tidal wave. We really can't afford to not do anything. So in the United States, we are spending more per capita than any other country in the world by about 2.5 times. And you can see in this graph here where if you're coming from another country like Canada or the UK, you can see where you fit in this. And then in the United States, we're spending a higher percentage of our GDP, about 18% of our GDP right now is going toward healthcare costs. And what do you think that we have to show for that? According to the World Health Organization report, we came in number 37 in the world in terms of basic health parameters like infant mortality rates and life expectancy. So clearly, all this money that we're spending on healthcare costs is not making us healthier. So we need to do something about this.
To watch the rest of this webcast, earn recertification credits, and learn more about certification programs, click the link in our description or join HR.com and subscribe to our channel.